Hello and welcome to Preconnotation Points Video Snark. I'm continuing my read-through of The Plan by Qwen Salsbury. Please make sure that you've seen the other videos in my Snark series about the book before you jump into this one. Chapter 5, aka Day of Employment 363. Personal Assistants Who Started Today, 3. How do you manage to go through 3 personal assistants in a singular day? I'm sure that the temp agency who's surely supplying these people hates Alaric by now. How can I be expected to accomplish anything constructive if I have to replace personnel every minute of every day? Rebecca fumes. Why do you work for a man who is like this? I feel like this is the more relevant question here. Rebecca, Emma's most direct boss, naturally complains about what an Alaric is. One of the other co-workers, Madeline, suggests that maybe he's depressed because of the upcoming holiday season. Co-worker number 2, Bert, says that he doesn't have any sympathy for Alaric because his nastiness is what's keeping people from getting close to him. And then a time skip to almost 9 p.m. when Emma is apparently finishing a final exam, one that she remarks that 3 hours is not enough time. Bro, you got 3 hours to sit a final? We were only given an hour in my school. As she's leaving the class, a girl whose name Emma can't remember comes over and asks if Emma will be taking such and such class. When Emma answers in the affirmative, the girl gets excited and invites Emma to a study group that she's putting together for the class. However, Emma inwardly says that she's using up all of her vacation days at work just to be able to take the morning class. And I'm honestly not even quite sure how to respond to something like that, if only because it just doesn't seem healthy or normal to do something like that. But I also feel like somebody's going to jump down my throat and defend how they themselves did something similar just to graduate and get a slightly less awful job. This is so painfully American. And no, that is not a compliment. And then that's the entire chapter. Less than 2 pages of a whole lot of nothing. Literally no plot movement. Nothing whatsoever. Let's put a pin in this because I'll talk about it at the end of the video. Let's move on to chapter 6 now, shall we? And meanwhile, I'll start praying that the actual plot will show up sooner or later and that the entire story isn't going to be just random points that never actually go anywhere. Chapter 6, aka Day of Employment 364. Emma feels in a mood somewhere between depressed but also upset and angry at the same time. She says that it's Saturday, which means that the night that Clara went out and got smashed was on a weeknight. Who does that? Emma searches high and low in her kitchen for a donut but fails to find anything. Clara's always home before now. Her workday starts around 2 a.m. weekdays and as early as midnight for the extra heavy Saturday sales. Quick question, is Clara a stripper? It would sure explain the lingerie in the other chapter. Emma eventually sends a text and gets an answer by way of hearing Clara's text message tone from inside Clara's room, but also Clara came home sick. She also apparently works at a shop, which is, for some reason, open long enough for somebody to start a shift between the hours of midnight and 2 a.m. Is it a sex shop? Emma gets dressed to go get donuts since there are none in the apartment. Later, Emma makes some sort of dough from a top-secret recipe of Clara's, despite the fact that Emma is the one who's making it. Yeah, I'm confused about this too. But she's apparently helping at the bakery that Clara apparently owns. But it sure does explain Clara's odd hours. And I guess that because Clara was sick earlier, the usual supply of donuts was not made and now Emma's gone in to help. I'm saying the phrase I guess because the passage in question is about as clear as mud, the writing is vague, and Clara and Emma talk about things that make even less sense. I feel like Bender reminding Fry, we didn't grow up together. A few hours later, Clara asks Emma to tend to the front of the shop. However, this was a ruse because Alaric came into the bakery. Emma says that she regrets having told Clara the name of the man that she had a crush on. Although this doesn't answer the question of how Clara knows what Alaric looks like, unless he's such a regular that she knows him by name. Except that if Clara actually was on a first-name basis with Alaric, why wouldn't she have said as much to Emma? Emma comes up to the front and just stands and watches Alaric for a moment. Eventually, Clara waves Emma over and asks that she help him finish the order. This is when it occurs to me that I am coated in a layer of flour thick enough to be easily mistaken for a geisha. Yikes, that's racist. However, Alaric quickly pulls back when Emma steps up, clearly affronted by the aforementioned flour that Emma's covered in. He insists that everything's good and quickly leaves. After he's gone, Clara congratulates Emma on picking out a nice-looking one. Very good job indeed, I dare say, indubitably. Say, could you be a brilliant chap and help me to extract this board from betwixt my bum cheeks? Quick question. What the fresh hell am I reading? The bakery closes at 2 and Emma goes home to shower. Later, Clara insists that Emma does something called beau brummel to Emma, but Emma says no. Clara then tries to give Emma a brief pep talk and says that Emma should try to go chase after her dreams or whatever. But then Emma says that she knows that chasing after Alaric was always some pie-in-the-sky dream. And I really want to cheer on that line of thinking because it's the first really healthy thing that she's said this entire time. But I also know that this is a romance novel, and I don't think that a second love interest is going to pop up and steal the show. So I'm stuck between cheering Emma on as she tries and fails to move past Alaric and Emma being drawn back into constantly daydreaming about him. Clara tries to ask Emma when it is that she's ever shrunk back from a challenge. And I feel like this is really going against everything that we've seen Emma's character doing in 6 chapters. She's about as spineless as a jellyfish. In an earlier chapter, she literally went out and bought new shoes because her coworker made fun of them. Emma says that she's not exactly going to waltz up to Alaric, open her mouth, and dazzle him with her wit and charm, but Clara insists that Emma should be herself and that Emma is smart and pretty. She goes on to say that office parties are where the line gets blurred and that it's the perfect opportunity for Emma to make her move. A few hours later, Emma laments the fact that Clara is the kind of girl who needs hours upon hours to get ready for some special event, but when Clara holds up some outfit for Emma's inspection and approval, I kind of get the feeling that this is less getting ready and more last-minute panic because Emma hadn't even picked out a dress. I will dress to the nines, but it will be for me. A book that's shown us nothing but a girl chasing after a man does not get points for throwing in "I'm dressing up to make myself feel good." She then immediately asks Clara to borrow her silicone bust extenders. Clara calls them chicken cutlets. Crimson satin dress so shiny and bright red that Dalmatians may try to ride around on top of me. That doesn't even make sense. Rebecca is already here, resting her elbows on the bar, shoulders hunched slightly. The constant upheaval at work may be getting to her. Overturned shot glasses line up single file in front of her like good little soldiers. The office in this book should probably be used as a handbook on how not to run an office. Anyway, Emma goes on for a while about how Rebecca was in charge of putting together the annual Christmas party, which nobody really liked because they were asked not only to attend but also to provide gifts for coworkers, even though I failed to see the words mandatory anywhere in Emma's explanation. It goes on to say that Rebecca decided to do a white elephant gift exchange, but then she promptly starts to describe a secret Santa instead, which just leaves me baffled and wondering if Salsbury knows what either is. Emma said that she drew Bert's name, who was the nasty coworker who made the comment about her shoes. Emma gave him a deeply discounted Team Jacobs shirt and an old gift card to the now-closed Border store as a "F*** you" to him. She stays with Rebecca to catch up on office gossip for a moment before she leaves to readjust her bra chicken cutlets. While Emma was in the bathroom, she missed the announcement that the company is not doing well, as she'd previously thought earlier in the book, but this also means thin Christmas bonuses. But as Madeline and Rebecca tell Emma later, a merger is in the works. Alaric is working on it. And speaking of Alaric, he has yet to show up to the party. By 8:30, it's firmly established that Bert is Team Edward. This is sadly the most interesting thing that's happened in the book so far. But Emma feels really low and bad about herself. She's all dressed up and she feels as though most people there don't even know her name, despite the fact that she's worked with them for close to a year now. Received a pair of 99-cent store Crocs and a back scratcher in the shape of a brown nose. What does that even mean? If Emma's a brown noser, wouldn't that, I don't know, imply a relationship with her and the boss, of which, as the book will not stop whining about, we know that it literally does not exist. But Emma says that they're from somebody in HR whom she doubts has ever even laid eyes on her before, so that only raises further questions. Alaric finally shows up at the party at 9:15, a good 2 hours after Emma herself got there. He stands by some decorative poinsettias, which is where Emma goes to stand as well, and tries not to feel crappy. Well, you failed at that. Let's see if she can actually bother to talk to him this time. She then does this awkward thing for like half a page where she tries to get closer to him, but he doesn't seem to realize that she's trying to talk to him. And Lord, is it painful to read. She eventually musters up the courage to say a simple hi to him. He hands her his empty glass and asks for such and such drink. Fuming, Emma stomps over to the bar to ask for his order and points out the man that it will be delivered to. Which is way more than I would have done for him, that's for sure. Half an hour later, Emma is still obsessing over Alaric. He seems bored as he talks to the company's VP. And then his date shows up, because of course she does. She's described as wearing Tiffany's, not Home Shopping Network. But the sight of her strikes a weird chord in Emma. She's seen Alaric with dates before, and despite knowing what his type seems to be, she didn't exactly take that into consideration when she got ready for the party. And in dressing up so much with her bra chicken cutlet, she seems to have moved even further from her target. She stalks from the party and goes home, and with that the chapter mercifully comes to a close. Going back to my point at the end of chapter 5, Salsbury has a rather peculiar writing style, and I'm not going to say that I hate it, but it does take some getting used to. The interactions between Emma and Clara remind me a lot of the writings of P.C. Cast, who wrote the House of Night novels, among other things. Just this tedious back and forth that doesn't really bring anything to the table, but at this point in a new book, I don't know if I should just skim over something like this or if it would later turn out to be relevant. Salsbury also drops in random pieces of info, like Emma casually mentioning to her date in the first chapter that her friend owns the bakery. But how are we supposed to know that this friend was Clara? Her writing is about as clear as mud at times. But I think that the main part of her writing style that's absolutely murdering the plan is simply the way that she's organizing her chapters. Every single new day is a new chapter, which means that we get chapters like chapter 5, which are so short and irrelevant to the actual plot. And then we get chapters like chapter 6, which is so long and seemingly without end. I just feel like Salsbury doesn't quite know how to cut the fat and gristle off from the meat, so to speak, so we end up with a whole lot of fat on our steak.